So, the 355 was directed by Simon Kinberg and it stars Jessica Chastain, Penelope Cruz, Lupita Nyong'o, Diane Kruger, Fan Bingbing, Sebastian Stan, and it's about a group of women who work for various spy organizations like CIA, MI6, yada yada yada, and they're all caught up in this conspiracy that they're kind of targeted in, and now they all kind of have to work together in order to clear their names, save the world, all that stuff. So I wasn't looking forward to this movie for a few reasons. One, even though the cast sounds really impressive, like all those actresses I just mentioned, the trailers just didn't look that interesting. It didn't look like a really interesting movie to me. It just kind of looked very bland, very generic, just something that's very run of the mill. Second, it's being released in January, which even before it got delayed due to COVID, it was still going to be released in January, which that's usually a bad sign for movies. Like, when your movie's released in January, that's not a good sign, especially in the first weekend of January. That's usually reserved for a movie that's pretty bad. And this movie is directed by Simon Kinberg, as I mentioned. The only other movie he directed was Dark Phoenix, so there's something. Which, I didn't despise Dark Phoenix by any means. I didn't like it, but I didn't despise it by any means. It wasn't the worst thing ever, but it just definitely wasn't good. And that's pretty much the best thing I can say about the 355. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's just not that good. It's the thing is when this movie is good, it's only okay at best, and when it's bad, it's pretty bad. It's a movie that it's bad. It's really bad. I can't even make a joke about how bad it is. It's just boring. So, is there anything in this movie that works? The only actress in this movie that I actually kind of cared about was Diane Kruger. Her character is the only one with some sort of arc. She's the only one with more than... She has a personality, unlike most of the other characters. They only have one trait throughout this entire movie, and it just never was that interesting other than her. She was the only character I actually kind of sympathized, I liked. That was it. Penelope Cruz kind of was alright for a while, but after a while I kind of realized that she kind of does the same thing throughout the entire movie. She just says, I can't do this. What about my kids? What about my husband? That's just basically her entire role until the very end, which I won't spoil by any means. And there is one really good scene in this movie where they kind of like, they complete a part of the mission and they're all in a bar and they all kind of talk about how they got into their jobs and how they like got their first kill and such. That was kind of fun, and they all crack jokes. They were all having a good time. And that's really it. Pretty much everything else about this movie is terrible. It's so bad. It's really, really bad. The rest of the acting is pretty bland for the most part. Like, Lupita Nyong'o, I usually like her. She's really bland in this movie. Sebastian Stan is so boring in this movie. Edgar Ramirez is just wasted. Fan Bingbing is just wasted. Jessica Chastain. I usually like Jessica Chastain. She's usually a really good actress. I've seen bad movies where she's good in them, but oh my god, she is so boring in this movie. She looks so bored. A lot of the actors in this movie just look bored. Just saying this dialogue and just doing these scenes. It just feels like her especially. Her character's the worst. Like there's a lot of exposition throughout this entire movie, and it's just kind of boring. That's the main thing I'm going to say throughout this entire review. It's boring. And the action is just incomprehensible at times. Again, kind of like Snake Eyes, shaky cam. Every time they do some sort of action scenes, whether it's a running, whether it's a chase sequence, whether it's a car chase, whether it's, a shootout or whatever, it's all shaky cam and it's just boring at this point. I'm done with it. It's amazing like how many times we do this. And they don't learn anything. Directors don't learn anything. Just stop using shaky cam. It's just terrible. And the plot itself is just incredibly generic. And like when you see things happen in the movie, you're like, okay, oh god, they're not gonna go with this direction. And they do go with that direction. And it's boring. It's so boring. It's so cliche. It's so predictable. It's so convoluted too at the same time. And it takes itself so seriously. It's so... I'm not asking every movie to be like, a comedy in a way, but act like you're more than just, act like you're human beings. Act like you actually want to be here. Act like you actually want to save the world and, save your jobs, save your lives, whatever. It just feels so boring. Everyone in this movie just looks bored out of their minds. just doing this. And the dialogue is so terrible. I was rolling my eyes. I don't even remember the dialogue, but I do remember rolling my eyes. It's just so bad. I saw this yesterday, and I was about to do a review, but I kind of delayed it until today. But still, it's boring. There's no real identity for this movie. It's just so uninteresting that honestly, I'm not going to be surprised if I just forget about this movie in the next few days. I didn't like the 355, and even though there are some good performances like Diane Kruger and even Penelope Cruz, for instance, and that one good scene, there's in this 2 hour movie, there's one good scene. That's how bad this movie is. But the action's bad, the acting's bad, the plot is generic and convoluted at the same time. It has no personality. It's just dry throughout the entire movie. Just don't really bother with the 355. I'm going to give it 1 out of 4 stars. Skip it. So, what's your favorite spy movie? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat, and stay safe.